everybody? Welcome back. Happy Friday. Good to see you. Okay. Everything looks okay. I'm back here. It's Friday. And alright, so on the docket today, I'm going to be doing talking about labor versus capital, and also if I get some viewers in today, I do have a couple of codes for the beta of Back for Blood that I think are good through Monday or Tuesday. So if you're here and want one of those codes, speak up and we'll work out a way to get you those codes. But for now, let's see. Nobody here yet. That's okay. I guess if somebody pops in and asks about codes, then they win. That's how we'll do it. And if nobody pops in, then I guess we got a couple of codes that'll go to waste. That's okay. So, jump into talking about the labor versus capital. Starting off with this strike that's been going on since I believe April. But this story will tell us. Let's shut off the music so we can hear. And okay, let's see here. Let's make this full screen. How's that look? Pretty good.
This is the dividing line, nestled at the entrance.
So this is talking about a coal miner strike that's been going on, I think, since April. It'll tell us in the story, but I think it's been going on since April. These coal miners that their old company went bankrupt, and another company came in and bought them up, and they made a bunch of concessions in order to keep their mine alive and going, and now our executives have just been reaping windfalls, and so they're asking for their labor to be a little less exploited. So we're here to stand in solidarity with them as they work to gain their workers' rights.
Entrance of the mine, those who cross it amplifying the discord and animosity in this small community.
Once you've crossed the picket line, I have nothing to say to you.
We will march by the hundreds.
A searing split for these coal miners in Brookwood, Alabama, calling this the fight of their lives. This small town, the latest flashpoint in the battle over workers' rights.
It's proud. One of the things I like to see, and it almost brings tears to your eyes when you see a sea of camouflage marching into an area. It's I don't even know how to say it. It's just a strong sense of pride.
Every union in this country owes something to coal miners.
More than 1,000 workers took off their hard hats and walked off the job back in April, spending the past 4 months on strike, the first one in the area in 4 decades. This after they say the company they work for, Warrior Met Coal, is treating them unfairly. Now they want better benefits. Behind the scenes, coal miner spouses get to work,
The tag's pulled out.
Sorting clothes and packing supplies for strike families, while their other halves hold the line in front of the mines. Hayden Wright is the local United Mine Workers Auxiliary president. She helps run the pantry, which is supported through donations.
This is the board where you write everything down. Each week it changes.
Yes.
And then you get the items and put them in the bags.
And we do about 200 bags a week. They can come in, they can get clothes if they need them, they can get baby and hygiene products, and they can pick up their pantry bag.
What would you do without Hayden, without your wife?
I don't know. She holds the family together. She holds the strike pantry together. She's been real supportive and strong throughout this whole strike, and I couldn't be prouder of her.
Braxton has been working at the mine for 17 years.
You come from a family of miners. You take a lot of pride in the work that you do. How difficult was it for you to make that decision to say, I have to go on strike?
It wasn't a difficult decision to go on strike because we knew that we had to fight for what we deserved. We wanted the dignity back in our job.
In 2016, Warrior Met Coal took ownership of the mine after the previous company went bankrupt. According to the union, workers took drastic cutbacks in hourly wages, holidays, time off, as well as medical coverage, and lost their pensions, allegedly believing all of those would be restored in the next contract.
We need to, get these people back up to standard, and the contract that was offered was not up to the other coal mines, and the people turned it down.
Chris Laurie says the workers kept the mine afloat for years.
I give you my youth. I've given you my time. I've worked 6 days a week for the last 17 years. You bought a coal mine. You bought an underground coal mine. You knew what the wages were when you bought it. We saved this coal mine. This ain't the first time we've saved it. We've saved it from fires. We've saved it from explosions. We've saved it from a lot of things.
Coal mining is one of the most dangerous professions in the country. In 2001, the number 5 mine in Brookwood exploded, killing 13.
Yeah, these are the gassiest mines in North America. You have gas, you have water. A lot of the working areas is knee-deep in water. It's a difficult job, not to mention the dust. You have more dust, around the working face because that's where you're cutting the rock and the coal.
According to the CDC, rates of black lung have more than doubled over the past 15 years. The workers we spoke to say Warrior Met Coal provides them with 80% coverage of medical fees. They used to receive 100%. Add to that claims of strict time off. Independent labor reporter Kim Kelly has been following the strike for months.
They're only making about $20-some an hour, and they're spending 6 days a week, sometimes 7, underground, 12 hours a day. Their bodies are broken, their lungs are all messed up. Like, their health insurance costs have skyrocketed because of Warrior Met. It's really an egregious situation.
We reached out to Warrior Met Coal for a comment, but the company turned down our request for an interview due to ongoing negotiations, telling ABC News in part it remains committed to reaching an agreement with the United Mine Workers of America, which is apparent through our contract offer that included increases in key contract areas, wages, benefits, and work-life balance. We have and will continue to work with the UMWA to reach a fair and reasonable contract that provides our employees with a competitive package while protecting jobs and ensuring the longevity of the company.
We're on the way to New York. Hey!
As negotiations continue, the workers have taken their fight across the country.
We're in New Jersey.
Just last week, Hayden, along with a group of strikers, traveled more than 1,000 miles to New York City to protest in front of BlackRock, Warrior Met's largest shareholder. BlackRock declined to comment for this report.
We're here to bring the picket, to bring the strike to their front door, because this is affecting our lives, our families, our communities.
Even actress Susan Sarandon showing solidarity with the workers.
So I stand by you one day longer, one day stronger.
The The strike has divided this Alabama community.
All of a sudden, I heard an acceleration of a vehicle, and he hit me on the right side, slinging me forward into his windshield.
Warrior Met told ABC News that it does not condone acts of violence and got a court-ordered injunction limiting the amount of strikers outside the mines to, quote, allow for peaceful ingress and egress to our facilities, as well as maintain public safety. The strain has also been financial. The union pays workers $700 every 2 weeks to hold the line, but it's still not enough.
Everybody's working other jobs, and you know, some guys are cutting grass, some guys are doing different things. Some of them's already got good jobs, electrical jobs and plants and stuff, and we're trying to hold out because we've put so much time here.
But a few workers have gone back to work for the mine.
Has that created some divide here?
Of course, because you can't be in a union. You can't say you're UMWA and that these are your brothers and sisters when you swore an oath that you wouldn't take your brothers and sisters' job, and now you're crossing a picket line.
So there will still be that divide even when an agreement is reached?
Yes. Yeah, because I said that we have to watch for each other underground, and if they cross that picket line and betrayed you, who's to say if you're injured they won't walk off and leave you underground?
If you wouldn't leave your brother in the mine, why would you leave him on the line?
As of 2020, only 12.1% of workers were represented by a union. That's half of what it was nearly 40 years ago. And on average, unionized workers earn about 11% more than non-unionized workers.
The reason that we've seen such a big decline in unionization, despite workers' interests in being unionized, has everything to do with massively increased employer aggressiveness against unions.
Eyes are on us for, not just the union workers, but for just workers in general. Because once a company is allowed to do one thing to, one group, all your other companies is going to follow suit. This isn't just our fight here at Warrior Met Coal with the UMWA. This is America's fight for working people everywhere.
This sea of camouflaged workers fueled by the motto, one day longer, making it clear they aren't going anywhere.
What if you don't reach that agreement? How long will this continue to go on, and when will it end?
We'll be here one day longer than the company will. I don't think that we're giving up. We're already planning a toy drive for Christmas.
You're expecting this to go through Christmas?
We don't know when it'll end, but we're going to be ready.
Yeah.
That's what your union does. So if we get through Christmas, we'll make sure that our union kids have Christmas.
And into next year, potentially.
If that's what it takes, we'll be here one day longer than them.
Elwin Lopez, ABC News, Brookwood, Alabama.
Okay, so that...
This is the dividing line.
So that goes into that story of these mine workers. They've been going since April. I think this is the first story in mainstream media in August where I've seen even mention of it. I could be wrong, but I haven't seen anything in mainstream media mentioning these mine workers or their strike, or what they're asking for, what they're looking for. Honestly, they're just looking for what they had before they sacrificed it to save their jobs. They just want to be treated with the dignity and respect that they had before. I don't think that's asking too much, and so stand in solidarity with these mine workers in Brookwood, Alabama, as they continue one day longer in this struggle. And speaking of unions, I'm going to talk about next is the Amazon situation in Bessemer, also in Alabama. I think that other story was in Alabama as well. If you remember, if you followed the story at all, the warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, Amazon warehouse, was looking to unionize. And the NLRB has issued a recommendation finding that Amazon illegally used a ballot drop box to defeat the Bessemer union drive, per a source. The NLRB will issue a final decision later that could overturn the results. From More Perfect Union, we documented Amazon's actions in detail. More soon. So, let's go over what happened with that Amazon vote, and how they interfered with the voting, used intimidation and coercion in order to get the workers there to vote to not unionize. And I don't know if another vote will have a different outcome because, again, the damage might already be done. Amazon has threatened them with their jobs if they unionize, that they would close the warehouse. So, but anyway, it would be nice if the results do get overturned. Which this was August 2nd. And it's the 6th now, so they might have been overturned. I thought I saw somewhere that they were. But anyway, so this just is going to kind of talk about
something suspicious happened.
How Amazon basically illegally interfered with the union vote to make sure that the warehouse in Bessemer would not unionize.
In the middle of Amazon's union election in Bessemer, Alabama, for most of the 2-month election, mail ballots trickled in each day to the National Labor Relations Board, a few dozen at a time. But all of a sudden, on February 12, a huge batch of 251 ballots arrived at the NLRB office in Birmingham. The pace of incoming ballots went back to normal. But then, it happened again. On February 17, according to people with knowledge of the election, another huge cluster of ballots appeared at the NLRB, 350 in total, on one day. Sources say these dumps of ballots were overwhelmingly no votes against the union. What was going on here? The answer appears to be a serious attempt by Amazon to manipulate the results of the union election. So serious that it appears very likely that the National Labor Relations Board will overturn the results. And in that event, should the Retail Workers Union demand it, the NLRB could call for the election to be rerun. Why did so many no votes, roughly 20% of all votes cast, suddenly appear on 2 key dates in February? According to the RWDSU, the only plausible explanation for the vote dumps is that they were the ballots collected from the mailbox that Amazon illegally installed in the middle of the night on the campus of the Bessemer warehouse.
On the second night after ballots went out in the mail, we started getting calls from workers that said, like, oh my God, they put this box up here and they're telling everybody to put their ballots in it and we're scared. We don't want to put our ballots in there. Like, who has the keys to the box? Does Amazon have them?
More Perfect Union obtained Postal Service documents about the Amazon mailbox. For no apparent reason, much of the text is redacted. But the documents show that Amazon wanted a ballot box installed as quickly as possible. And the documents discuss how to physically manipulate the box to allow for mass ballot collection.
As you can imagine, that can open it up to a lot of coercion, a lot of intimidation on the part of the employer, compelling or forcing employees to come and use the ballot box that they've installed at their location.
This mailbox, which Amazon installed in violation of explicit guidance from the federal government, is key to understanding how Amazon illegally coerced workers and manipulated the results of the election.
We've received reports of intimidation and coercion. We've seen communications where they've essentially threatened that there would be a layoff because of the union. And that's what would be considered a hallmark violation of the act.
The union election was set to begin on February 8, but Amazon had been hard at work for weeks prior to that, putting in place a systemic, coordinated effort to engineer the outcome it wanted. Amazon hired a union-busting consulting firm, labor information services, to create classes that workers were forced to attend. Workers were subjected to mandatory anti-union meetings, sometimes 2 to 3 times per week.
So the entire month of January, you went to one every week. Some people went to more than one a week. They'd say stuff to you like, everything's on the table when you negotiate with the union. We could take everything away. You know, you could lose your pay, your benefits.
Some of those who shared with me on breaks is that they're afraid because Amazon told them in the meeting, the union buster said that if you get the union, then your benefits will be taken away. And so some of the younger people are kind of confused and have been told that the union is a bad thing.
When workers asked pro-union questions, managers came back to scan their badges in an apparent effort to document pro-union workers.
I asked like 3 questions to make them tell the truth.
Yeah.
When I got back to work, the PA came to me. I saw her pass everybody, and she came to me and she said, "Let me see your badge." She said, "Because when they scanned it in the class, yours didn't go through." So she scanned my badge and I watched her. She never scanned anybody else's badge because I was the one that brought out the question that will make them tell the truth about the raises or the union dues and stuff like that.
When the election began, the classes were mandated by law to end, but Amazon transitioned to a new phase of its campaign. It compelled Jefferson County to change the traffic light signals outside the Bessemer warehouse to rob the union of one of its most effective messaging tactics, speaking to workers at red lights as they headed into the office warehouse. Meanwhile, Amazon pummeled workers with anti-union messaging via text messages, Twitch ads, and notes on bathroom stalls and break rooms. Do it without dues, Amazon propaganda explained.
Every time we go to the bathroom in your stall, in the men's bathroom, as soon as you go to the stall, you got an anti-union flyer right there in front of you. You got flyers in the break room. You got when you walking in and walking out, you got big banners saying early vote, vote no.
When the election began on February 8th, Amazon deployed a concerted misinformation campaign targeted at its employees.
We've seen Amazon try to confuse people by telling them they needed to vote by March 1st, even though the deadline was March 29th. And the reason for that was to try to get people to cast their ballots right after the captive audience meetings and before they've had an opportunity to engage with the union.
Amazon felt if workers could be forced to vote quickly, they were likely to vote no. And once they voted no, they were not allowed to go back and change their vote. That's where the mailbox strategy came into play. If Amazon wanted workers to vote early, they needed a way to coerce and compel them to submit their ballots.
Not only have I never seen a company install or have a mailbox installed on their property for purposes of mail ballot election, I've never even heard of a company asking for such a thing.
Amazon initially asked the National Labor Relations Board if they could install a ballot drop box in the warehouse. The request was denied.
When the request was denied, went ahead and just disregarded what the board had said to them and installed it themselves. It's the first time I've seen that. And in fact, when I've talked to some of my management side friends on the other side, they're all flabbergasted by what really is pretty audacious on the part of Amazon.
On the second night of the vote, February 9th, the mailbox suddenly appeared, just steps from the entrance to the warehouse.
For workers, it's twofold. It's number one, if I'm a pro-union supporter and I'm putting my ballot in this box, is Amazon going to know that? Are they going to track it? Are they going to steal it? What's going to happen to my ballot once it gets here? And for those that maybe necessarily wouldn't have voted, maybe they were just kind of impartial to the idea, they want to support their co-workers, but they also don't know a lot about the union. But now they've got this manager that's saying, hey, I've noticed you haven't voted yet. You didn't bring your ballot to the box. You should bring it tomorrow. Bring it and put it in the box.
The reason why you wouldn't want to have effectively have a polling place where the employer, at the employer's facility without the supervision of the board, is that the employer's supervisors will go around to these employees and say, you need to bring your ballot in, you need to make sure you vote, and you'll have employees following their supervisor's instructions, bringing in their ballots to work, which they're not supposed to do, and feeling the pressure that they have to cast a ballot for the employer. And that's what the The mailbox being installed at an employer's facility and to be used for the purposes of casting ballots creates this pressure on employees.
As the NLRB counted votes, Amazon deployed the last phase of its anti-union strategy. It challenged hundreds of ballots, specific ballots, ballots that were cast after March 1. Amazon was well aware that by March 1, the tide had swung in the union's favor in a major way.
And there should be no intimidation, no coercion, no threats, no anti-union propaganda.
Knowing that many of the post-March 1 votes were likely yes votes for the union, Amazon's lawyers aggressively challenged them. Amazon won by engaging in exactly the kind of coercion and intimidation that President Biden warned of.
Under Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act, employees are guaranteed the right to decide the question of whether they want to organize or not in an environment free of coercion and intimidation.
We haven't heard the last from the courageous workers who took on Goliath. If the NLRB grants a new election, they'll be back, and it's likely they will have the votes to win. Something suspicious happened in the middle of...
Okay. So, yeah, like I said, man, I hope they reverse that and allow them to vote again and put safeguards in place to prevent Amazon from interfering like they did in the last one. Again, the damage might already be done. They might have already intimidated enough of their workers to prevent the vote from changing the outcome. But man, I hope they get another vote. I hope they get another chance. And I also implore you, as I'm scrolling through Twitter, oftentimes I'll see promoted tweets from Amazon. And when I do, I always reply with the hashtag #UnionizeAmazon. So if you ever see those ads, the promoted tweets from Amazon, where they're sniffing their own farts and saying how awesome they are, go ahead and drop a hashtag #UnionizeAmazon in their comments on the post. Let them know where you stand. So we stand in solidarity again with the workers in Bessemer, as well as all Amazon workers. I think all the warehouses, all Amazon workers should get together and unionize and flex their power on Amazon. So that's where we are at with that. And again, this was August 2nd when this came out, and I want to say, if maybe there's something in the comments about I thought I saw somewhere that the NLRB had issued the final decision, and that they were going to allow another vote to go forward. So if they do, show your solidarity in any way you can. Support those workers in Bessemer to vote to unionize. And hopefully that'll open the floodgates and start a chain reaction with all the Amazon warehouses to unionize. And finally, because you didn't know, I really like Second Thought. So they released a video today saying, "Is this the beginning of a new labor movement?" That's the title of the video. So we'll watch that and then discuss that as well.
skilled tradespeople throughout the U.S. economy.
The Department of Labor reported only 266,000 jobs were added in April, and the unemployment rate for the last month ticked up to 6.1%.
12 states have cut unemployment aid about 3 months before federal benefits expire in September.
At the very moment that unemployment is rising, fewer people are working, American businesses say they can't find employees. And it's obvious they can't. Go to the nearest strip mall and count the help wanted signs on the doors. They're everywhere.
If you've turned on the news within the last couple months, you've probably seen all sorts of dramatic coverage and special panels on the supposed labor shortage that has cropped up in the wake of the pandemic. Thanks to the COVID relief checks, tiny and inadequate as they were, for the first time in decades, many Americans found themselves with the tiniest bit of bargaining power against their boss. Suddenly, they could afford to stay home from their low-wage jobs, at least for a little while, and many took the opportunity to do so and look for better employment. This led to a wave of posters and signs outside places like McDonald's saying that no one wants to work anymore, as if it were some kind of moral failing that people were choosing not to slave away over a griddle 10 hours a day for poverty wages. But this new bit of tension between workers and employers is just the tip of the iceberg. In this episode, we're going to explore the possibility that the United States is witnessing the birth of a new labor movement. Okay, time for a pop quiz. I'm going to give you a quote, and you try to guess who said it. Here it is. Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor, and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital, and deserves much the higher consideration. Who do you think made this assessment of labor and capital? If you've seen my other videos, you might assume this is a quote by Karl Marx, but you'd be wrong. This quote is actually by none other than President Abraham Lincoln from his 1861 State of the Union address. Lincoln was a contemporary of Marx, and there is some evidence to suggest that the two may have even corresponded at some point. But regardless, the fact that a president of the United States, a place we today consider the bastion of free market capitalism, would make a statement so supportive of labor over capital is probably shocking to many of you. Believe it or not, the United States did not always have the exploitative, soul-crushing labor landscape we see today. There was a time, many years ago now, when workers had actual bargaining power, where they could come together and say to their boss, "Hey, we've got some demands," and the boss would have to work with them. Today, that kind of relationship is nearly unthinkable. The barest hint of unionization in the workplace is often grounds for termination. Benefits our grandparents took for granted have been stripped away. Pensions, vacation time, paid sick days, maternity leave, a company car, a fair wage, all relics of a bygone era, consumed by the all-devouring ideology of cost-cutting and maximizing profit. Of course, executives never feel the sting of these measures. In fact, their compensation has only continued to grow, to the point where wealth inequality is now just as bad as its peak during the Gilded Age. These days, many workers never even meet their boss. They're not even considered employees. The gig economy has drastically changed the way we look at work. And as of the latest available data, 36% of American workers have turned to gig work to make ends meet. Combine the lack of livable wages, increasing rates of depression, lower life expectancy, and rock-bottom job satisfaction rates with a global pandemic, and you've got the perfect storm for a renaissance of class consciousness and labor activity. While it may not seem like much to the untrained eye, over the past year, we have seen workers taking the very first steps towards fighting for better conditions. One of the most important developments has been the resurgence of the labor strike in various industries as a tool for forcing change. For example, in 2020, during the pandemic, we saw strikes among nurses, teachers, flight attendants, and auto workers, to name just a few. In each of these instances, the workers, typically unionized ones, formulated demands that would provide them with better safety measures and wage protection for the duration of the pandemic. Nurses' unions picketed for adequate PPE and better staffing to handle the massive influx of coronavirus patients. Teachers demanded that schools remained closed until reasonable safety precautions could be implemented to protect themselves and their students from contracting the disease and taking it home to their families. Auto workers forced the shutdown of plants over social distancing concerns. Flight attendants negotiated for paycheck protection to be a part of the industry bailout, ensuring their economic security through the turbulent pandemic. In a time when millions of Americans were being laid off from work, many from jobs that would not survive the pandemic, union workers enjoyed a certain level of protection thanks to their bargaining power. And as such, they were laid off at a lower rate and often with job or paycheck guarantees. this hasn't gone unnoticed. After decades of decline in union membership thanks to vicious union-busting campaigns and expansion of corporate power, in 2020, membership began to tick up again. 2019 marked an all-time low for union membership, with an abysmal 10.3% of workers being represented by a union. In the wake of the pandemic, that number has climbed just a bit to 10.8%. While this may not seem significant, it represents the sharpest increase in 40 years. And the fact that it's increasing at all after 4 decades of steep decline is very promising. This increase in membership corresponds with polling that indicates a majority of Americans see the decline of unions as a bad thing for workers, and it coincides with the proliferation of labor voices on social media. But we'll get to that in a minute. One important union action that's currently ongoing, as of writing the script at least, is the impressive strike by Alabama miners who, along with miners from several other states, traveled all the way to New York City as a group to protest their unfair treatment outside the BlackRock headquarters. BlackRock is the primary shareholder of Warrior Met Coal, which operates out of Brookwood, Alabama. Warrior Met miners have been on strike for over 4 months now, demanding a fair contract after saving the company from bankruptcy. Back in 2016, when Warrior Met was in danger of going under, miners accepted a $6 per hour pay cut to keep it afloat. Since that time, the company has extracted record profits from their operation, netting $309 million in 2019, while the CEO continues to pocket his $4 million salary. All of this is on the backs of the people who actually do the incredibly hazardous, backbreaking, unenviable work down in the mines. Of course, this well-deserved strike has garnered very little mainstream media attention. One thing that's very important to note is that class consciousness and solidarity, the practice of standing with your fellow workers, does not necessarily follow a cut-and-dry political divide. I'm sure there are plenty of fancy business people in New York looking down on the miners as a bunch of rednecks, not only their class enemy, but opposed to their preferred political team as well. While it may be true that many of these Alabama miners espouse right-wing politics in general, if you listen to their own words about the strike, you'll notice there's nothing even the most centrist Republican would support. The United Mine Workers Association president said, "We're in New York City because we're simply following the money and demanding that those who created that wealth, the miners, get their fair share of it." While Abraham Lincoln would certainly have agreed with that sentiment, modern politicians are opposed to it in every way. Both Democrats and Republicans have fought tooth and nail to destroy unions and make sure workers don't have any bargaining power, in order to keep their corporate donors happy and cutting them nice campaign checks. The only group in America that supports the striking workers in just about any instance, regardless of industry, is the socialists. What many people have historically seen as a left-right divide is understood by socialists as a capital-labor divide. The working class of the US is made up of people from all political backgrounds, and their class interests are the same, regardless of those political beliefs. It's no coincidence that membership in socialist groups like the DSA has been increasing in tandem with union membership. Flowery words from politicians don't mean much to striking workers, but actual material support from other workers does, and the socialists are always the first to lend a hand, specifically because of their understanding of class struggle. The DSA is the largest organized socialist group in the US, currently sitting just shy of 100,000 dues-paying members. And since the pandemic, that number has jumped from 66,000 to its current 92,000. That is a massive increase in a very short period of time. It just goes to show that when all politicians have to offer is empty promises and an increasingly miserable capitalist status quo, building an economic alternative starts to sound pretty appealing. It's no wonder that polling continues to show a decline in favorability for capitalism and an increase for socialism. Politicians and the ultra-wealthy seem to be doing their very best to turn the rest of us against them. For example, Amazon has been at the center of worker rights discourse for a while now, and instead of laying low, Jeff Bezos decides to go on a little joyride to space, while his workers literally die on the job. Public perception has turned decidedly against the ultra-wealthy, and for good reason. The only way they're able to amass their vast fortunes is through the exploitation of their workers, and the problem continues to get worse. Right now, there's still very little awareness of the nature of class struggle, the battle between capital and labor, among the American people. Those in power understand it. That's why unions have been all but destroyed since the Reagan years. The accumulation of ever greater profits requires greater and greater extraction from the laboring masses. Without a banner to organize behind, the American working class lacks the cohesion it needs to make effective changes on a national scale. In the past, it was socialist labor leaders like Eugene Debs who offered a path forward. And thanks to the bold actions of workers back then, we have many things we take for granted today. Child labor laws, the weekend, the 8-hour workday and 40-hour workweek, workplace safety laws, and so much more. All of these were socialist initiatives supported by millions of hardworking Americans with an understanding of class struggle. The most critical thing we can do right now is work towards rebuilding that lost class consciousness. It will be a challenge, but we have more tools at our disposal than ever before. Social media has proven an effective tool for raising awareness and coordinating labor actions. And as the younger generations who grew up with the internet become more politically active, we'll likely see social media play an even larger role in organizing and agitating for positive change. The DSA isn't perfect, but it is a good first step for getting involved and learning how to organize within your community. See if there's a local chapter, or if there's not, reach out to the national branch and start one yourself. If you've done the reading, if you have a good understanding of the mechanics of class struggle, talk to your friends about it. Each one teach one, as the expression goes. Every little bit helps, and we need all the help we can get. A new labor movement, one that can really force concessions from the ruling class, would drastically improve the lives of average Americans. It could afford us financial security. It could give us time to spend with our friends and loved ones. And maybe, if we're lucky, it could even make America the country it claims to be. A country that works for everyone, not just those with money and power. The labor market is constantly changing, finding new ways to extract value from human energy. If we can organize for better conditions now, the future of work might not be as terrible as the present. If you'd like to get a glimpse of what that could look like, I highly recommend you check out Work of the Future on CuriosityStream. It's a hopeful look at what kinds of meaningful, stimulating jobs could replace our miserable current ones in the coming decades. CuriosityStream is an established streaming platform with a solid track record of caring about great educational content and the financial security of those who produce it. They've got thousands of nonfiction titles from some of the best filmmakers in the game.
I think the rest of that is just a ad for CuriosityStream. All right. Oh man, that's good. That's good stuff. Oh, okay. I don't know what I can add to that last video, honestly. It does such a good job explaining everything and making it simple and easy to understand. There's not a whole lot of that I can add. Other than we're in a rare moment where workers are starting to realize the amount of power that they have over capital. Capital depends on labor and exploitation in order to make their money and increase their capital. And without that labor, you're seeing the effects of that right now, and in a smaller scale for sure. It's not a wide scale thing yet. Hopefully one day we'll get to the point where we can launch some general strikes and really put the pressure on capital to take back the power that workers have, that labor has over capital. Capital's greatest fear is that labor will discover that it has all the power, and that it will use and wield that power against capital. So as long as capital keeps us divided, as long as they keep us indoctrinated in their ways, it's going to be an uphill battle for sure. But it's important to understand and to know that capital needs labor and not the other way around. Labor doesn't need capital. Labor works with or without capital. Capital doesn't work without labor. So it's important, and unions are an important step, I believe, in achieving some of that power and shifting some of that power dynamic from capital back to labor. And to go one step further, I'm an advocate for worker co-ops, which we will discuss on a stream another day. But for now, we stand with workers everywhere who are starting to realize the power that they have, and who are using that power to get back some of the capital that capital has taken from them, exploiting their labor. So with that said, where are we at? 10-2. Yeah, with that said, I think that's it for today. No viewers today, so no. I had those back for blood codes, but it's hard to give away codes to nobody, so I didn't think that one through very well, obviously. As a new streamer, I'm not gonna have the viewers to give codes away, but that's okay. Yeah, so it's been real. Thanks to anybody who stopped by and lurked. I think a couple of people might have popped in and lurked. I appreciate anybody who comes in and listens, and I'm a lurker as well, honestly, so I get it. I like to lurk in most streams that I watch, so I appreciate the lurkers as well. Having said that, thank you all for a wonderful time. Have an amazing Friday. Enjoy your weekend. The weekend that labor brought us, which is an important thing to remember on a stream like this, is that it was labor unions that gave us things like the weekend. So shout out to labor for giving us the weekend, and the 8-hour workday, and anti-child labor laws, and all the other contributions that labor unions have made. And I hope that labor unions, the misinformation about them will subside, especially now that labor's kind of seeing the power that they have, and seeing how it's making capital squirm and put those stupid signs on their doors about nobody wants to work anymore and people are too lazy and the government, and it's blah blah blah. It's all bullshit. It's capital mad that you're not there giving them your labor so they can exploit you or their capital. So I think with that, I'm gonna head off. It's been amazing. I appreciate all of you. And yeah, again, enjoy your weekend. Love you all. Bye.